So welcome back, everyone. I hope you had uh, your short time well invested to re-energize yourself. So let's start and kick off with Marcel Meuer. Are you ready, Marcel, to present your session?
Yes, Christian. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I'm saying I'm ready.
Okay, give it away. Good
Okay.
luck.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let me start. Yeah, I I think everybody know that WVD raised up in the last months, and I get some experience I want to share today with you about the project I had and some solutions I built around to make it a little bit more easier to work with WVD like it works now in the pre-spring update version. And so let me talk shortly about me. I am Marcel Meuer or Meurer. I'm working for a consultant company in Cologne, in Germany, with have some in Munich and Hamburg as well, two offices. And I'm personally focused on cloud technologies. Primarily, Azure Monitor is one of my favorite technologies I use and I work with. And I have some experiences with machine learning and more in the last months regarding WVD. So from my history, you must know I started at Zipago in 2003, and it was a company and is a company focused to end user computing. And since the last year, we have, or I personally have the both of two worlds. I have cloud and I have end user computing. So let me start. I prepared the slide, and I thought by myself that it's not necessary to repeat all the things you already know or you had heard about. So only a few short things. WVD is that we got from Microsoft, which handle all the stuff we normally had to build or we built in the past with infrastructure and other service with server operating system like RD Gateway, RD Web, licensing, and so on from on the one hand. And we get this now for free, or we can use it for free if we have the right license. And we have the operating system like Windows Server, Windows Client OS like Windows 10 or Windows 7, and even the Windows 10 multi-session host, which I normally use in the most projects. But we have, or I discovered two things which are not so easy to handle right now. That is, how do I deploy and prepare operating system to roll it out later as a session host? And on the other hand, how to monitor that what happens in WVD, in the sessions and so on, and from the backplane to get a good idea what is wrong or when I do have to scale the session host or use other instances like Thomas mentioned before. So let me dig in. To summarize, to give a short summarize, what we have today in WVD in this version is on the on the top level is a tenant group. That is not so important. The more important thing is the tenant. And I hear it often from a customer side that it is not so easy to make a difference between an AAD tenant and a WVD tenant. To name it short, you can have multiple WVD tenant in one Azure AD tenant, and the user you have in your Azure Active Directory, which must be synced with a normal legacy or classic Active Directory, that is where the WVD tenant must exist and where you can assign users to your application or desktops. On the second level, in my opinion, if I don't care about the tenant group at this point, or the host pool, you can configure, or you have to configure to provide applications and to assign the session host to. And you have two different things. You have the personal desktops, which must be or can be assigned to a user, or you have the shared one, which is a normal terminal server environment, or works like a normal terminal server environment with many users on one session host, one VM. So if we start today working with WVD, we have to, and let me share on my screen is shared. Let me go to PowerShell And I'm sure you know it. You use PowerShell. You log on to your WVD environment, like I do now, and don't put the password into the name field. I'm not sure if I get it. Oh, it was right. And I think you know it. You have the command, the PowerShell command get rd as tenant, where you get the tenant information or the list of tenants you have in your environment. And if you want to get deeper, you have to append the name. If I want to have the host pool, so host pool list, I have to append the tenant name to see the data from that. And that is how I normally, or I started to work in the last year, working with WVD. And if you want to see the applications, then you have to append the name of the host pool. For example, this one, and so on. And you can imagine this goes longer and longer if you want to dig to a single application, also, or to a user session or a session host. So what I built and what is free for all commercial and non-commercial is a tool. It was mentioned before. Thanks for that. It's called WVD Admin, and I will show you in this case how I work in my WVD environment or in the projects, POCs I started at our customer use. And I get a lot of feedback around the world from people using this tool to build a WVD environment and to manage a WVD environment. Let me show you how it works. You can see, or you have a view to my tenant. This is my tenant. It's called Builder City, and it has different host pools. I deployed one on the weekend for the Global Azure Bootcamp. This is, for example, the host pool, Global Azure Bootcamp. It's a normal host pool with a load balancer type breadth first. That means it distributes the sessions around all session hosts. And under that, I have the session host giving me the power to work with my application. And if users are connected, I can see the user here as well. Users is a good point. It's not so easy to handle the user. If you use this tool, you can find the users in a list on the bottom. These are users are logged in today to show it. And if you want to interact with the user, you can filter them 07 to find the WVD 07 user, and then you can do the thing you would expect to do. And it's the same what you can do with PowerShell, a little bit easier, because you have not to append the tenant name, the host pool name, the session host name, and so on to send the user a message. Hi. And I saw the question in the chat before. If you are in the same network with this GUI as the session hosts are, then you can mirror. That means you can shadow the session and can support the user if they have an issue working with an application or so on. And to name it, the user must accept that that you can shadow his session, and you must have a local admin permission to do this shadowing. But you can do it of that, or you can, if you want to do it, you can log off maybe all sessions from a single server, single session host, like design 05. These are all users running on this specific session host, and I can then log them off, which takes a few seconds, and then they are gone, or on the way to gone. Okay. There's only 1, 2, 3 left, and I think they will log off in a few seconds. Okay, now they are gone. But let us create a session host we can use later at a host pool to put a session host later on. I will go for a shared version and name it, and hopefully it is there, and I can set a maximum session limit, which is important if you have the load balancer type depth first, which means that you first put the maximum number of sessions to one session host before the next one is used. This can help you to avoid costs. Though you all sessions goes first to the first session host, then to the next, and so you have some time to spin up some other session hosts. Let us define that for 20, and friendly name we can set it, but it's not necessary. What I built a few weeks ago and was an advice from Thomas. Thomas, thank you for that. Is how to work with user groups, and I think you all know that user groups are not really supported. If I have, let me show this one. If I have an application group or desktop group, I have user assigned to that, and if I want to add more user, I can do this easily with add, and can from now grab groups from my Azure Active Directory. And what then happens if I click on OK, the members, it was not a good bite, not a good example. The members of this group is all the members of the groups are then written here in the text box, so I then can add them to my application group. It makes it a little bit easier, but this is not dynamic, as you know. So let's come back. I think let us refresh the view to see the default desktop group, and then we can use them later. And give them a good name. WVD community desktop, and then we can use it later, maybe if we have the time to deploy enough session hosts or one session host to that. Okay, so let's go to back to the presentation. Another important thing is the deployment, and we saw some solution which I very like with the pipeline and the portal, and that what Freak built with the ARM template. What you normally have from if you start with WVD is you can deploy the image from the marketplace, and this is a different experience for an admin because you have to enter a user, a domain user, which are able to add a session host, a virtual machine to the local Active Directory, the password, the organization unit. You need another user or service principal to add the session host to the WVD tenant into the right host pool, and some other kinds. That you can use, or you can go on the PowerShell way, which gives you the maximum flexibility to do whatever you want to do and to deploy as many session hosts in whatever a session host pools you want. That is really good. I love this to work with PowerShell, but it's not for everybody usable, which is maybe not so familiar in PowerShell. And what I built into the WVD admin tool is a process to work with to build images and roll out images, which means session hosts later into your host pools. So what I use in both scenarios, the PowerShell way or the way with WVD admin, is the golden image approach, which is I compared to Citrix machine creation service. It feels like that. So you have an image, or you build an image from a template virtual machine, which is also domain joined, where you have installed all security updates, all your application on top, manually or with SCCM and a software deployment tool or solution. And then you capture that image, and from the image you build your session host. There's one specific thing if you do that in Azure, and normally I ask this into the audience if we are live. If you build an image from a virtual machine in Azure, you do a sysprep, which is known to reset the operating system inside, and then you have to generalize the virtual machine in Azure. And generalizing a virtual machine in Azure means that you destroy the virtual machine. You have your image after that, but the virtual machine cannot be started again. There's gone, because the name is, it doesn't work. If you try this and you debug this, you will see that Windows 10 or server is booting into a blue screen, the setup blue screen. And so you cannot enter anything at that point. So what I do in the PowerShell or in the other way is I have a template virtual machine, domain joined, all things installed. And from that, I create a template snapshot. A snapshot is a copy of the disk. And from this disk, I create a temporary virtual machine. And with this temporary virtual machine, I do the full stuff. I sysprep the temporary virtual machine. I generalize the virtual machine. I copy the image into a resource group. And after that, I delete the destroyed temporary virtual machine. So I have both. I have the image after that, and I have my original untouched template virtual machine to reuse it later to add maybe in 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, add additional security updates, or add some updates for my application or other application as well, as one approach. I have a small movie, and I hope it works. Oh, it works. I showed this last year on the Cloud and Data Center conference in Germany, where I did all the thing with PowerShell. And what there happens is that I have already a template virtual machine, which will now be deallocated. And then this happens. It will create a snapshot, a new virtual machine from the snapshot. It will trigger the generalization and the sysprep for this virtual machine and grab the image. So let me move this faster. And after that, I have exact the thing. Yeah, the temporary virtual machine is created and is ready for generalizing, and it takes a while. And then, I guess you believe me, I will have ready to use image, building image, and then removing the destroyed or generalized temporary virtual machine and image to use. What I do normally today is, because it's a little bit easier, is I do the same thing with WVD admin. And for that, first I have a template virtual machine. It's my WVD basic 10. It's a normal, like I said, domain joined Windows 10 virtual machine. It's domain joined. This is my domain controller. I have a software share, and let me install one application as an example. Oh, with sound. And after that, I install. Okay, maybe not the best application to show this. I installed an application, and after that, I log off and shut down the virtual machine inside. But what I did meanwhile, I shut it down the template virtual machine, and then I go back to WVD admin, and I will find this virtual machine under Azure in the resource group WVD template, and there is my virtual machine, and I can easily build an image from that, clicking create a template image, selecting a target resource group for the image and give him a name, and press capture. And then happens the same thing like happens with the PowerShell. It deallocates the virtual machine, makes a snapshot, creating a temporary sysprep, generalizing, and after that I can use it. And I have one prepared image. Let me select the last one. It's a 9009 in English from last Saturday. And from that I can create a session host and have to select a name. I have this the signs to get a numberation of the session host name and select the host pool, WVD community. I select a subnet where the virtual machine should be appended. I choose this, a resource group, and I can select and have to select a disk, and I normally use the standard SSD and a disk and a compute size. DS3 is a good one to test. Here's a checkbox, and make sure that you check this. This rules out the virtual machine with a license type client, which means that you have not to pay for the license, for the OS license in this case, and it can around 40–45% for the cost compared to a normal virtual machine rollout in Azure. And after that, let's start with 3. It starts the rollout process based on the image, and it takes up to 5 to 10 minutes. It depends from the size and the amount of application you have installed into the image to see the virtual machine, a session host running in the right host pool. So let's go back, and I have to make sure that I don't shut down my computer. Really crazy. Okay. I used, for my rollout, I used the standard SSD. There are some other kinds of storage you can use. I often go for the standard SSD, which in my opinion have a good relation between price and performance. But there are two other kinds you can use or you can normally use, like the premium SSD. And you can see here the price is for 128 gigabytes. It's approximately, it depends a little bit from how do you use it. And you can see that the premium is, it's cost doubled than the standard SSD. And you have one other thing, and that was an information I got from a blog post from Mika Vetz. This is a thermal disk type, which is very specific. A thermal disk doesn't cost anything. They are for free. A thermal disk means that if you deploy a session host, it will generate on a hypervisor on Azure with only local storage. So that is the reason why it doesn't cost for the storage. And on the same side, the storage is very fast because it only runs on the hypervisor itself, and it has not been transferred via network. So we have a very cheap or for free disk, which is has a high performance. On the other hand, you cannot deallocate this session host, because if you deallocate it, it will be taken away from the hypervisor, and while the disk cannot be moved, it only exists local. There's a reason why you cannot deallocate them. But you can delete the virtual machine and can rebuild it in a WVD environment using FSLogix. It can be a good way to save money and have a high performance. Let's show you shortly the difference. I have 3 session hosts running with different disk types, and I have Crystal Disk Mark to give you a clue. It's not really, it's sometimes it changes. It's not. It's more for the to give a comparison to compare the different types. If I run this measurement again, it could have some other values. This desktop has a standard SSD, and only the 2 rows, the 2 first rows are important for me, because they are mostly give the same value, and the random doesn't do that. And you can see the read and write rate from a standard SSD compared with a premium SSD, which give you a higher value normally, and an ephemeral disk type, which has the best performance overall. You can see read and write is nearly the same because, in my opinion, the reason is because it has not to traverse a network connection to be stored. But the ephemeral disk cannot be, as I mentioned, shut down. Let me show you this one. I have here, this is a session host, DEN01. And if I try to deallocate the host, I should get an error message. Yeah, because it cannot be deallocated. It can only be deleted, which I do later. If you want to roll out such a session host, let's try it, then you can easily switch to ephemeral, and the rollout process itself, it's very fast. It's faster than using SSD, and then we will have another one after a few minutes. So let me go to the next thing. It's about monitoring. Let me skip this for later. It's about monitoring. I started in 2017 building a solution which monitors, or which can monitor end user computing environment like Citrix or RDS infrastructure in the cloud or on premises. Focus on that, what happenings in the session itself, like bandwidth, latency, what user are using what kind or what application, and if we know the application, how many impact have each single application from all users regarding CPU, regarding memory, and some other kinds. That was my target I had in the past in 2017. And it was important for me to build a solution which works nearly cloud native, except the session hosts or the RDS workers, for sure. And I discovered a platform service in Azure. It's today more called Azure Monitor. It's log analytics in the background, which give you the storage, the database, and analyzing performance, and to build a solution on top. And that is what I built in the past, and I will show you some information about that. What I built is the single Azure Monitor agent for WVD. It's a small executable running on each session host. I put them into my golden image, which I deployed, and they report the information coming from performance counter, from the operating system API, from WMI, and from different sources inside the virtual machine. And it will combine the different data set and put to each data set the user and the session ID into the data set, so that we can monitor all the things regarding the user, regarding the session. And let me show you how does it works. I rolled out several session hosts with the agent, and I have, let me check this. I have to open it again because it was closed. It was closed. New. Oh, let me go for that. It was closed because I was short to shut down my virtual machine, my notebook. I will get it. was prepared. And the session hosts are continuously reporting data into one of my log analytic Azure Monitor workspaces or container. And the data arrive there. And if you want to see the data there, you can go to logs. And on the left pane, you have something like the tables. They're called log type. And the first 5, these are created while I'm sending data to this workspace. And the other one, WVD activity, WVD checkpoint, WVD error, these are the data I got from the WVD backplane. You can configure your tenant with a PowerShell command to redirect the logs from the backplane into your workspace so that we can query them later to find out if connection goes wrong and what was the reason, and to get a clue about that. So what I have prepared, and you can install it from the marketplace if you want to do that. I have the workspace summary, which comes with some pre-built visualizations, which show you some information about your WVD environment. This is for my test environment. Maybe I can switch to the company environment to work with some more data later. And you have some information about the session hosts, which is really easy. I have running 19 session hosts in the last 24 hours. You can select any time frame you want in the past and show maybe the last 15 minutes or data about the last 2 years if you have data for 2 years or data collected for 2 years. And if you go into it or click on into it, you go from the tile views to the view charts, and here you have different information like even the bandwidth, the average bandwidth overall in my environment or by user on different workers, which are session hosts in this case. And more important like the bandwidth, you can see the different. I have 81 kilobits in average, but some users doing more have a much higher value, like this session has 1.9 megabits per second. And yes, one of the important things is the latency, and they are right now all around 400 milliseconds, and there are some other which are not shown here, which give in some 214 milliseconds of latency, which is most important. If it goes up to 500, 600 milliseconds, the user will feel that something is not working as expected. Let me go to the interesting thing. I skip some. If I want to get information about site and application, which shows me what happened in my environment regarding the users, regarding the application, and what application are crashed in the last now 24 hours, we can see that easily here. And you get information like what user is using what application on which session host, regarding CPU, regarding memory. And one of my favorite charts, are the last 4, which shows you the application which have done or have the most impact regarding CPU, regarding memory over the last 24 hours or the selected time frame. And in my case, it's Edge. And the Edge regarding CPU and the Explorer regarding the memory usage. And on the other hand, if I'm more interested in seeing what user are using my environment at most, and it's maybe the reason why I built such a strong environment. I can see it here, and in this case, it's my admin user doing. Let me show, is it already open? Which doing a fishbowl animation in HTML5 in one session. I guess that is the reason. But we have a lot of more data inside than we can see here. Let me open a log, or let me later switch to, maybe it's now a good point. Let me now switch to the environment. This is our environment from our company. It's not so huge, but it has more data for close to a year. And if I show you only an example how fast Azure Monitor works with the data inside, and I will only show you 1, 2 simple queries to give you a clue about the performance. Let it load. It's sometimes a little bit slower if I do a Teams session at the same time. Prepared demo, which means that I have prepared queries. And let me change the time frame to the last year. And to show you how many data we have different tables, and only for data regarding performance data, we have close to 80 million data sets. And for processes, we have around 365 million data sets, single data sets. The data are no time aggregated. They're all in raw format in log analytics for up to 24 months in the past. And let me show you only one example. If I summarize all processes assigned to a user, except the system process, and summarize each single data set for the processor time of this application by username, and show me only the top 10 in a pie chart, then let us take how fast it is. And it was not prepared and not cached. I did this today the first time and the last days, and it was less than a half second. I have seen values like 5 to 6 seconds as well, but it's very fast. And I can see my colleagues using our environment regarding the CPU. And in this case, my colleague is using the environment nearly the half for that. And with the next, I could figure out what is the reason. And if I show only the processes of my colleague in the same manner, and it's Explorer X in this case, I don't know why, but that is the reason in this environment regarding the CPU usage. But I think more interesting than showing you our data is how to work with. I can do a full day with querying the data, and you get really good information. But let us show what data can we get from the WVD itself. And we have 3 different tables, log types, to the activity, to the checkpoints, to the errors, and they must be combined to get a good idea what happened. Let me open a prepared query I saved today to show you from the activity log for the last 24 hours what connection has been established. And you have to keep in mind that in this table you will see the sessions after they disconnected or they logged off. So all my users are running from tomorrow morning are not part of this table up to the time they log off or get disconnected. But these are my connection for the last 24 hours, which are already closed, and you get some information here, like the session host pool name. Important is one thing here. Here's one ID in. It's this ID, and this ID is referred in the other tables if you have some problems or if you get some problems. I have here some sessions without an agent information, and this session are failed. And to query this session or the reason, or to get information what happens with the session, I put one of the IDs, the first one, which has a failure, and join this table with the other tables to get more information about this single session. And it's in an order by the duration. And you can see at this point every single step while you try to build or to establish a connection which fails at the end. And this is with a checkpoint. What we are now missing if the error, I have prepared this as well. Failure reasons. It's a little bit more complex because you have to join the activity logs, have to join the checkpoints and the error table to get the full information about this. And log on failure. And here I have a table which shows you the error, or in one line, the summarized data for session which failed. And in this case, I had a session host which was unhealthy. Another thing you can see at this point is the logon duration. And that is really cool because you get the logon duration from the point a user clicks in the agent to start a session, or really close to that. So from the first information from the Azure backend, from the broker service to broker your session. And let me show you this. I have summarized this by the username for the last 24 hours. Let me enlarge this to get more data. And then I can see what user for which host pool had which duration for the logon process, which is where some difference in, and mostly that depends from the first user. The first log on is always longer to build the profile, and after that it is faster, and it depends on some application which do maybe something around. And that is a good way, in my opinion, to get information about the performance for the login process, including the things happened before the user first touched the virtual machine in Azure, and to find out what are reasons for problems where connection couldn't be established. And in this case, the virtual machine was off, so that was not able to log on, but there was a session lingering in this case. So I've go faster to the end. Let me show if we roll out some session hosts. Let us check if they are there. Let me close this. And we roll out a session host or session host for WVD community. And after the last or after the rollout, it takes a while to connect to the Active Directory and to the let me refresh it full, and to the WVD backend or to the WVD host pool. And let me I cross my finger that we will see some session hosts there. Oh, maybe it takes a little bit more. Last try. And after this, cross my fingers, don't shut down my notebook. We should see them. But I think you believe me if it needs some more time. Trust me, it will appear very, very fast after the last reboot, after logging, after joining the domain, and so on. WVD community. There. For session host, and this one, I think one is the ephemeral one we rolled out. And so now it should be usable from the RD agent. Which closed as well. We give them a WVD community, and that is then the session host with a fresh new virtual machine. So I guess this works. Let me close this and come to the end. If you have questions, please feel free to reach me out. I have a bunch of stuff I would love to share with you, but time is limited. And thank you very much, and feel free to reach me out via Twitter, LinkedIn, or via mail, or like any other kind of communication you want to use. And thanks a lot.